I think, just to remind you that if there are things we don't cover off this evening, we do have these flip charts, so if you feel that there hasn't been enough opportunity to discuss stuff, that's there, and also just the email address, which is ldf@westminster.gov.uk.
That's right, yeah.
As well, which is great. I don't know what I said to the people sitting next to me, but it was obviously very effective. So on we go. So I think we're on to waterways.
Yeah, for the second section we're talking about the Blue Ribbon Network. The Blue Ribbon Network for Westminster is the River Thames, the canals, and also the two major bodies of water within the Royal Park. So I think the Longwater and the Serpentine are covered by the Blue Ribbon Network. There's also a Thames Special Policy Area that relates specifically along the Thames. So the questions that we have this afternoon relate to, or in the second session, relate to the Blue Ribbon Network. But again, we're not restricted to the questions that we raise here. And also at the end, there's an opportunity for any other issues that you want to raise with us. It doesn't matter if they're being discussed at a different workshop. If there's something you want to raise, you've come along tonight, and please feel free to raise it with us. Okay, so the first question for the session. At present, we only allow new moored vessels on the Thames that are of national importance or have some special association with London or the Thames or have some special maritime interest. Should we look at legal mechanisms available to us to amend this approach to only allow vessels that are of national importance or have some certain interest? And that is, should we be restricting the types of moorings? And I think there's a certain enforcement case that you were involved in terms of the moorings.
Well, I'll be glad to briefly touch on that as it goes to the heart of this first question that's been raised. On the Victoria Embankment, you have 3 vessels which are on the register of historic vessels: the Chrysanthemum, the President, and the Wellington. The only one I remember is the Wellington was a destroyer in the Second World War, and I think it says on the plaque shared in the destruction of a U-boat and so forth. The 4th vessel that used to be moored on the Victoria Embankment was the Discovery, and I've had difficulty finding out when that actually left and went up to, I think it was taken up to Glasgow. I think it was
Dundee.
the 8th. Dundee, thank you. I'm not sure if it was in the 80s, but that was replaced by some pontoons, which originally moored just one vessel called the St Catherine. That was also on the register of historic vessels as being the PLA flagship, and it was the first vessel to open fire on the enemy in the Second World War. And it's on the other side of the pontoon was a vessel called the Wilfrid, which is a man and boy cargo vessel, Thames sailing barge, I think is the technical term. And what happened is that spot began to be used for mooring party boats, and an enormously lengthy investigation took place into this matter and concluded in 2007 with a 4.5-day public inquiry. And what the council's case was that these party boats were definitely not of any special maritime interest, any significance or importance in that sense, and didn't warrant a place on the Victoria Embankment. We made clear that there were lines and lines of them midstream, which was much less of an issue, but not right against the listed embankment wall of Joseph Basil Jet, not right in front of Somerset House, and not in a place where there should be more or less iconic vessels. The inspector listened to this argument, but eventually decided all parties agreed that everybody has a human right to moor a vessel briefly at the quay side, as it were, to take on water and move off. So everyone accepted that transient mooring in the course of navigation is lawful and completely outside the control of the local planning authority. But the inspector decided that there was no difference in practice between several party boats mooring transiently and one vessel mooring for a longer period of time, say 2-3 days in the intervals between going out on parties. And so unfortunately we lost, and if you walk along the Victoria Embankment now, where the Discovery used to be, you'll now see quite a little collection of party vessels. in that particular spot. So the policy that the council has for only wanting permanently moored vessels to be of special maritime interest, we have successfully used it. We resisted a mooring of a Russian submarine in that location. The committee turned that down. A lot of children might have wanted to go on it, but the view was taken that wasn't.
Some of them quite large and elderly.
So large and
actually,
elderly,
as well.
myself included. But the committee took the view that it didn't have historic association with the Thames, and so we did refuse an application to put a big Russian submarine there, 100 metres long, however it was. We also refused permission for a Hull fishing trawler to be moored there, the Ross Leopard. There was the Ross Tiger and the Ross Leopard, as in Ross Fish Fingers, and the Ross Leopard had been involved in the Cod Wars, and that was argued to give it significance for the Thames and reason why it could be moored in the heart of London. The committee wasn't convinced by that, but permission was given on appeal. The planning inspectorate took the view that the Hull fishing trawler, it had nice lines, it did have association with maritime interest, and permission was given to moor that vessel there. In the event it never did take up the option of mooring there, the reason being these party vessels were there. So my point is that any discussion about whether we should have a policy on allowing party vessels to moor, little plastic boats really, to moor right up against the embankment, we can have a policy by all means, but it's met the acid test of a lengthy public inquiry, and it has been the precedent has been set, unfortunately, that makes it quite difficult to resist the mooring of these vessels. Sorry, that was a bit lengthy, but that is the...
Well, I think I learnt more about mooring on the Thames than I expected. Are we really saying that as much as we'd like to, if we wanted to have these only vessels that were relevant, that it won't matter? Or is it that if we put such a policy into the local development framework, then it will have more standing in, should we be taken to a public inquiry in the future? I think that's probably what people want to know.
I think as well that's why I added to the question, we look at legal mechanisms. So as we said, with won some and lost some with the current policy framework, but do people generally support that we continue to fight party boats, restaurant boats and those other sorts of vessels being moored permanently along the river, or should we just let it go?
No, I agree with you. Prevent it if you can.
To keep trying to find a legal mechanism to stop party vessels
Are these permanently moored boats that we're talking about then?
Yeah, not just in transit.
Because it seems that if they're parking a boat in a conservation area, shouldn't there be some kind of design criteria to the design of the boat? I don't know. You would do it with a building, but if a boat's permanently there, it's like a fixture and fitting in a conservation area, and I wonder whether or not there are well-designed party boats and poorly designed party boats. I don't know anything about
And
naval architecture, but it must be the case.
And none of them noisy, one presumes.
I don't know. It seems a bit illogical to let a plastic, horrible boats go in a conservation area with no design control.
Should John answer that question?
Mooring a boat for a temporary basis isn't development, and the only things it's only development that you can control under the local development plan. So, in essence, no, it's similar to having a street trading stall. It's a temporary thing. It goes there and then it goes away. So it might look awful, but you can't control it because it's temporary. It's not a building. It's just a thing. Transient.
We do in licensing. We do that in licensing.
Through licensing, yes, but not through planning.
Yes, I just want to make that clarification.
But the inspector did make a difference, did distinguish between boats that are there permanently and boats that move off. So, for example, the Wellington is permanent, so that our policy, we would be able to apply that policy in that case, but not in this case because the boats were mooring for a few days and then leaving off.
They weren't.
And it was an enforcement case, so